Welcome back. It is KTN Scoreline, where we always do it sport. And we've been talking a lot about what is happening in the world of sports. Specifically, we were talking before the break about the state of sports sponsorship and what the government had pledged in regards to do with the sponsorship. We also heard what the Football Kenya Federation president had to say in regards to some of the sentiments that the money maybe has not yet reached the clubs the way they are supposed to be, but he's clarified on some important issues. But now, before I engage actually my colleagues here, the gentleman in the studio with me, let us listen in what Ambassador Kaberia, that is the PS of sports, had to say in regards to do with the sponsorship and what the government had pledged on the same. My question then will remain, has the government then given the money that they pledged?
The government has given the money that they pledged. The government pledged money for the federation, FKF, and every request that has come to us through FKF has been given. We need to also separate between clubs and teams from federations. The government does not finance clubs directly. We finance the federation, and the clubs are financed by the federation. So if there is an issue with the various teams or clubs, they need to talk to FKF. But for us, on our part, whatever request we have received, we have catered for.
That statement on its own raises a lot of questions, because he's saying whatever requests that have come unto us. I spoke to the Federation boss and they clarified on the same, saying that that is not what it is, because there's no money that has gone to the clubs as of yet. What do you have to say, Tyrus?
You see, the thing is, I don't know Mr. Kaberia's relationship with sports. I don't know whether he swam for Kenya or Nairobi province in those days. Because when it was Nairobi province, because I think he's a bit older. I don't know whether he played rugby. I don't know whether he played soccer. I cannot see the link between him and sports. And going by his title, he's a former ambassador. You see, if you go back to the Jomo Kenyatta era, Mzee Kenyatta ensured almost perfectly, but not entirely, that whoever he appointed as a cabinet minister for this, for example, is someone who was associated with that ministry. For example, he appointed for many years Daniel Toroitich Arap Moi as Minister for Education. Moi was a schoolmaster, a teacher by profession. Jeremiah Nyaga also served as a Minister for Education at some point. He's an educationist, or at least he was assistant minister to Moi. He was an educationist. Who else? Dr. Kiano was a minister for education at some point. The first Kenyan to get a PhD, you see? An academic, a scholar. But I think Mr. Mwai Kibaki as president also did something similar. He appointed Raila Odinga as Minister for Roads. Raila is an engineer by profession. Look at the roads in Kenya today. You can trace that link, but I see a situation whereby I don't know whether Mr. Ambassador Kaberia is passionate about sports, because you have to start from there.
What he's doing, maybe what he's doing right now, and I'm not speaking for him, what I've been able to see as a journalist. I know Kaberia was a journalist. He worked for BBC, he worked for Washington Times.
In sports or politics or what?
He covered a lot to do with the Somali wars. He covered a lot, he reported a lot to do with what happens in...
What does that have to do with sports?
Yeah, I know your point, but he's someone that has shown the willingness. For me, I think I've seen several of PSs doing what they're doing, but Kaberia is trying. That's my personal take.
You see, that's not the issue. That's not the issue. The issue is the relationship between Ambassador Kaberia and sports, because you have to start from there. Are you passionate about what you're doing? Do you love what you do? Would you die for it? Would you wake up in the middle of the night having lost sleep, thinking about it, getting stressed about it? Would you
Alex,
crack
I don't know
your
what's your
brain
take
about
on what
it? It
he's
starts
raising.
from there.
What I think is very clear from whatever we've mentioned. Government, their processes and their systems. And the way Ambassador Kaberia has mentioned is that as a government, they deal with the federation. And the issue that we are discussing currently is an issue that is affecting clubs. And the only way they can be able to support clubs is through the federation. So personally, for me, what I feel is that there has to be a coexistence between the KPL Secretariat and the federation. Because the government cannot deal with the clubs directly. The only thing they can be able to, the only people they can deal with is the federation. So for this money to trickle down to the clubs, there has to be a mutual coexistence between the federation.
Another question is, and I'm sorry to barge in,
yes,
is government supposed to sponsor these clubs? Or is it the corporate sector? Is government supposed instead to create the conducive environment in which the corporate sector comes in and funds?
The first clip that we listened in, the Deputy President said that SportPesa is out, we will cover that.
Exactly.
So there is a commitment there.
Yeah. Yes, but is government supposed to do it? Because...
Yes, they are.
Yeah.
I'll argue they are, and even the Deputy President himself has admitted they are.
Yes.
They're supposed to
cover that deficit that has been left when the... SportPesa went out. Yeah. The point is that.
You see, now that takes away the corporate world from being enthusiastic.
The corporate also is supposed to, and that is...
Because it's going to be a bit of hit and miss here. It's going to be there'll be a lot of confusion, because is government supposed to do this?
Then now the issue of club licensing comes on board. Exactly. We saw what the federation did in regards to do with the club licensing, saying that all the clubs that are taking part in the leagues here in the country needs to be self-sustaining.
Yes. I think federation were very wise and futuristic in this club licensing, and I feel that if this issue is implemented, the core will not be having issues of players not being paid and everything.
So are we saying that the club licensing actually did not do what it was supposed to do? Then if we said that the clubs needs to be able to pay their players, club needs to be able to support their staff, clubs needs to do A, B, C, D, and they were given the license, yes, you're good to go. And now we're saying players are suffering because clubs cannot support them. KPL just comes in, it's like they're just handing them grants to say, continue doing what you're doing.
You see, confusion already. Confusion. That's the key word. We haven't even taken the first step, and there's confusion. It's like everything has stalled. We're waiting for Serikali's idea. You know that Kenyan good old joke.
But club licensing was supposed now to remove that Serikali's idea.
What happened, Moses, is that you realize that the club licensing has been facing a lot of hurdles, because when it was supposed to be implemented this year, there were some court orders that were given. So what happened is that the federation was able to go through the whole process, and I think from their own statements is that this club licensing is something that we are here with, and if you ask a team like Gor Mahia and FC Leopards, they will tell you that club licensing is a serious issue, because you cannot play any CAF, any confederation match, you can't play without satisfying the club licensing procedures. So it is something that is going to take effect, I think, next year, and all clubs will have to adhere to it.
We didn't have these problems when SportPesa were on board, did we?
Because money was there.
Money was there, you see.
So it's all about money. I know, very interesting conversations here, but let's listen in what the Vice President of Kenyan Premier League, that is Eli Kaleko, and also the President of Sofapaka had to say in regards to all this fiasco in matters to do with money in the Kenyan Premier League. At the same time, it matters to do with what exactly is this club licensing and what has it achieved so far.
Ni shida kwa matimu zote kwa sababu sisi wote tuna ile kitu tunapata kutoka kwa KPL, na kitu yenye tunapata kutoka kwa KPL haimaanishi kama ni budget yote ya club. Inakuwaga hata wakati tulikuwa na sponsor wawili, SuperSport na SportPesa, bado tulikuwa tuko na shida kama hizo, tulikuwa nakumbwa na shida kama hiyo, because hiyo pesa haienee ile budget ya club. Ni inaongezea. For example, walikuwa natupatia around 600,000. You can't run club with 600,000 a monthly. Hiyo tunaweza ichukulia ni kama allowance. Klabu zingine kwanza kama hizi zenyewe natoka Mombasa to Sony, hiyo is only one game. So unaona bado ni club, we need more sponsors as a club first. KPL inakuja ni kuongezea. Pesa zote zinapasha kuja, club inapasha kujiorganize. Iwe na mdhamini, kama haina mdhamini itafute njia yoyote ambayo inaweza zisimamia. Hiyo ndio wanaitaga club license. Uliona last time was victim Moron Youth, Sofapaka and Thika United. Kusema kama sisi hatueneze, na kitu ilikuwa inatukumba bado ni financial. Na saa hizi bado tuko kwa same story ya financial ya club. Sio sasa club moja, ni club zote. Sasa unaona hata hiyo kupitishwa hiyo club license ilikuwa wrong, kwa sababu kuna nini zenye ambao hawakutumia vizuri. Kwa sababu unapoangalia wadhamini ya KPL, hata leo KPL ingize ile pesa itupatie kama ile pesa ilikuwa inatupatia, bado club inahitaji pesa, because it's not enough, haitoshe.
So far si mbaya, tunang'ang'ana, tunashinda magame zetu, but as far as sponsorship iko, tunaomba at least kama sponsors wanapatikana, kwa sababu wenye sasa nini walijitoa SportPesa nafanya ma teams na struggle na si poa, because sina make effort kwa uwanja. At the end of the day maybe nini needs zako jazimich, because maybe hakuna sponsor, ma team pia zinasuffer na kwa hii career yetu si nini poa.
And actually, that is the bottom line. Clubs are struggling, players are struggling. But Eli Kaleko has given out a very, very different perspective of it all, telling you that things are not that easy. Clubs need to sort out themselves first.
Yes. I think what we need to ask ourselves is, what are clubs doing to attract sponsors? Because you can't just sit down and sit somewhere and you expect that a sponsor will come and sponsor you. There's some basic things that a club needs to do. How organized are they? Is there a structure? Is there accountability? So these are things that clubs need to come out and show to the public. Do they have a website? Because most of these sponsors are people who are seated in boardrooms. They'll go into a system and, Google and see how is this club structured. So these are things that clubs need to do so that at least they can attract sponsors who can be able to sustain their daily running for their own, their own needs that they want to check on.
And that's pretty much what I was saying. Government comes in to provide the kind of environment that would make it conducive enough for clubs to attract sponsors. When you rely on government, you're relying largely on promises, bureaucracy, and a lot of the time the promises might be well-meaning, but they turn out to be empty promises. It stalls the entire progress. Meanwhile, the clock keeps ticking. The guy who looked like a young player this morning keeps growing older, starts getting gray, and starts going bald as well, and another generation gets lost. And it becomes the generation of, the tug of war between government and SportPesa. Essentially, I think the politics behind all this is a lock of horns between government and SportPesa. SportPesa were growing so big, and government thought, oh my goodness, this looks like a threat to our standing.
In less than 30 minutes, what should be the way forward?
The way forward is ultimately for government to create the kind of environment in which sponsors would be attracted naturally to go and support individual clubs, instead of having this situation whereby you're relying on government.
Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I agree. And what I think we should also do is that, one, clubs should also put the house in order. Two, as media, you need to really market our game. The more you talk about it, the more somebody somewhere else will like to be attracted to that brand. So I think also the media should be able to sponsor, to hype our game, so that the clubs can also get people who can come in and sponsor these clubs.
Thank you very much. You raised that issue, and I'm very, very glad because I work here, and KTN has been